The secret on your plate. Cooking made us human and could define our future. Hello, curious minds, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about something you do every day without thinking, cooking. But what if I told you that this simple act of heating food is the reason why we are here, right now, you and I, having this conversation? We're going to embark on a journey together, a descent through 5 levels of knowledge on this topic. I promise you that by the time we reach the bottom, you will never look at a steak, a potato, or even a simple piece of toast the same way again. Level 1, the surface we all know. The most famous idea is this: cooking food is like pre-digesting it. Imagine your stomach as a worker who has to break down a brick wall. If you give him whole bricks, i.e. raw food, he will spend hours and expend a lot of energy. But if you give him pulverized bricks, cooked food, the job is 1,000 times easier. That energy our ancestors saved on digestion went directly into building the most expensive and powerful organ that exists, our brain. Also, and you know this by instinct every time you wonder if that meat has been out of the fridge too long, cooking kills germs. Fire is the best disinfectant in the world. It eliminates dangerous parasites and bacteria that would have made our ancestors' lives much shorter and more painful. It's a layer of safety that we take for granted every day. But it wasn't just a biological change. Think about the origin of this. A campfire. A fire. The first meeting place. Around the fire, while the food cooked, we didn't just wait. We shared stories. We forged bonds. The kitchen became humanity's first social center. History's first let's meet for dinner. And of course, the most obvious reason of all, cooked food tastes better. Heat triggers thousands of chemical reactions that create flavors and aromas that drive us wild. It's something so fundamental to us. But have you ever wondered why? Why is our brain programmed to love the taste of cooked food and not raw? So there you have it. More energy for the brain, fewer diseases, a social meeting point, and better taste. This is the version almost everyone knows, the tip of the iceberg. It's the nice and simple story. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines are driving it underneath? It's time to dive in. Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Remember we said cooked food tastes better? The reason has a name, and it's pure chemical magic, the Maillard reaction. It's not simply browning, it's much more. It's an incredibly complex dance between amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, and sugars that occurs with heat. The golden color of toast, the crust of a steak, the aroma of coffee, all of that is the Maillard reaction. It's the chemical language of flavor that our brain evolved to understand and crave. And this leads us to an invisible rule that governs our eating. Our brain always seeks maximum energy for minimum effort. It's a biological law. Why do you crave pizza more than a lettuce salad? Because your brain, which is an ancestral survivor, knows that pizza is a bomb of easy-to-get calories. Cooking was history's first hack to increase the energy density of foods. We tricked nature into giving us more for less. Here's where a factory defect of our brain comes into play: food neophobia. Neophobia sounds complicated, but it's super simple. It's the fear of trying new foods. It's an ancestral defense mechanism. If you don't know what it is, it's better not to eat it. It could kill you. But cooking helped us overcome this. A new and strange food, once cooked, smelled and tasted familiar and safe, thanks to those chemical reactions we already knew. Cooking made us braver and more adventurous when it came to eating. And around that campfire we talked about, something happened that defined our societies forever. Someone had to hunt or gather, while others tended the fire and prepared the food. This wasn't just a task, it was the birth of specialization and the division of labor. This simple need to keep the fire lit while others sought food was the seed from which economies, social roles, and ultimately civilizations sprouted. But deep down, cooking solved an even deeper human need, the fight against uncertainty. Raw food was a gamble. It could nourish you or make you sick. Cooking transformed it into something predictable, safe. It gave us a small but crucial degree of control over our future. Tomorrow we could light the fire again and eat safely again. That, for a brain anxious to survive, is peace of mind. And the last hidden gear is amazing and changes the whole perspective. By needing less effort to digest, our digestive system, our intestines, literally shrank over generations. We are the primates with the shortest intestine relative to our body size. And where did all that energy and physical space we saved go? Exactly. It housed and fed an increasingly larger brain. It's not that cooking gave us a big brain, it's that it allowed us to pay for it. Understanding these gears, the chemistry of flavor, the law of energy, our innate fears, and the physical changes it caused, gives us a new perspective. It's no longer just cooking is good, it's understanding the how and why of our own biology. It gives us power over who we are. But if you thought we had it all figured out, get ready, because this is where the story gets really messy. Level 3, the chaos of reality. Here come the debates. The most famous side, led by researcher Richard Wrangham, says that the control of fire and cooking began almost 2 million years ago with Homo erectus, and that this was the big bang of our evolution. But another side, the more cautious archaeologists say, wait a minute, evidence of such ancient controlled campfires is very, very scarce. Perhaps the big change was much more recent. It's the battle between biological theory and archaeological evidence. And let's talk about a myth you've surely heard, the paleo diet. The idea that we should eat like our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Sounds romantic, right? We love to believe in a pure and perfect past. But the reality is that there wasn't one paleo diet, there were hundreds. It depended on whether you lived in the Arctic or in the jungle. And most importantly, our ancestors ate whatever they could to survive, not to optimize their health. Furthermore, the plants and animals back then have nothing to do with what we buy today at the supermarket. And here's a brutal paradox. Cooking allowed us to develop an enormous and complex brain, but that same brain now depends completely on cooked food. A modern human could not survive long on a strictly raw diet in nature. We couldn't extract enough energy. So the same tool that made us masters of the planet also made us incredibly dependent on it. We are fragile geniuses. And now an uncomfortable question. We take it for granted that cooking is good, homemade, familiar, but the evolution of cooking has led us to ultra-processed food and industrial agriculture. Is a system ethical that gives us cheap calories at the expense of animal welfare, the health of the planet, and often our own long-term health? The same drive for easy energy that made us human is now making us sick. Even the debate about what is good or bad has changed. 70 years ago, canned food and pre-cooked meals were seen as the pinnacle of progress and liberation, especially for women. It was science and the future on your plate. Today, the word processed is almost an insult. We've gone from seeing technology in the kitchen as a solution to seeing it as a problem. The debate is a pendulum. And all this has led us to a very modern, very human problem, the anxiety of choice. Our ancestors ate what they could. We enter a supermarket and face 50,000 products. Organic, local, low-fat, keto, vegan. The abundance that cooking has given us has become a source of constant stress and confusion. We no longer know what to eat. As you can see, the reality of cooking and our evolution is not a straight line. It's a mess of scientific debates, popular myths, paradoxes, and ethical dilemmas. It's messy, complicated, and there are no easy answers. All right, you've survived the chaos. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs. Level 4, expert knowledge. Here's something you won't find just anywhere. Remember the Maillard reaction, that magic that browns food? Well, under certain conditions with high temperatures and in starch-rich foods like potatoes, that same reaction can create a not-so-magical compound called acrylamide, which is potentially carcinogenic. It's not something to panic about, but it's a fascinating detail. The same chemical reaction that gives us the flavor we love can also create a risk. Let's talk about something called starch gelatinization. It sounds super technical, but it's very easy. Imagine a tightly wound, tangled ball of yarn. That's a raw starch molecule in a potato or a grain of rice. It's impossible to pull out the thread. Now put that ball of yarn in hot water, i.e. cook it. The yarn unwinds, swells, and becomes soft. Now you can easily pull the threads. That's what happens to starch. Heat unravels the energy molecules and allows our body to absorb them effortlessly. This is how we convert a hard potato into pure energy. And we have to talk about the hero, sometimes controversial, of this story, Richard Wrangham. He's the Harvard primatologist we mentioned in the previous debate. Before him, people talked about meat, tools, but he was the one who focused on something seemingly boring like cooking. He spent years studying chimpanzees and realized they spent half their day chewing. His big idea was that the time and energy freed up by cooking were not an extra, but the key that changed everything. It was a revolutionary idea that forced everyone to rethink our history. But there's a fascinating rebel view. Some argue that before fire, our first form of cooking was fermentation, letting fruit rot a bit or curing meat. Fermentation, like heat, pre-digests food and kills some pathogens. Perhaps it wasn't fire, but bacteria and yeasts, our first chefs. Or perhaps both processes, fire and fermentation, work together in this revolution. And here's something counterintuitive. We think cooking always makes food safer, but in some cases it can concentrate or even create toxins. For example, some raw legumes have toxins that are destroyed when cooked. Perfect. But if you don't cook them at a high enough temperature, those toxins can become even more potent. Cooking is not a magical universal solution. It's a chemical process with very specific rules. And now the aha moment, a detail that ties everything together. How do the shrinking of our intestines and the growth of our brain relate to something like language? Think about it. Smaller mouths and jaws, which no longer needed to be so robust for chewing raw food for hours, along with a larynx that could change position, gave us the necessary anatomy to articulate complex sounds. Cooking not only gave us a brain to have ideas, but could have physically sculpted the tools to express them. Seeing these details, the fine chemistry, the rebel theories, the unexpected connections, it's not just about accumulating data. It's understanding that our history as a species is written in the language of heat, molecules, and biology. It's a much richer and more authentic view of who we are. We have reached the limits of what is known. Do you dare to look beyond towards the final frontier? Level 5, the final frontier. What about the future? Will we continue to cook? Imagine cellular agriculture, meat grown in a lab from cells without sacrificing an animal. We could design steaks with perfect fat profiles, or milk identical to cow's milk but created in a bioreactor. It would be the next revolution, cooking no longer as the transformation of a living being, but as the creation of food at a molecular level. It would be the definitive divorce between food and traditional agriculture. But this leaves us with the deepest and perhaps unanswerable question: what came first? Did we discover fire by accident and then realize that food tasted better? Or was there already in our ancestors a curiosity, an innate desire to transform food? Was the control of fire a technological accident or the manifestation of a cognitive intention? We don't know where the spark of the idea began, and the philosophical implication is dizzying. We often think of technology as something external, like our phones or computers. But cooking is a technology so ancient and so deeply integrated into our biology that it has changed us from within. Our genes, our organs, our brain, everything has co-evolved with fire. In a sense, we are not just humans who use fire. We are the planet's first cyborg species, a symbiosis of flesh and flame. And understanding this is key to our future. If the first cooking revolution allowed us to feed a larger brain and create civilizations, the next revolution, whether with lab-grown food, artificial intelligence in the kitchen, or vertical farming, could be the key to sustainably feeding 10 billion people. Mastering our food, again, could be what saves us from a global crisis. And the final mind-blowing idea for you: perhaps cooking is not just pre-digesting food. Perhaps it is a form of external cognition. That is, we externalize a complex mental process. Instead of internally calculating, is this safe? How much energy will it give me? We use fire to solve the problem for us. Cooking could literally be an extension of our mind, a way of thinking with fire. The journey has ended. We have descended through the 5 levels, and now, with this new and vast perspective, it is time to contemplate the full picture. We began this journey with a simple and familiar idea. Cooking makes food easier to digest and gave us energy for the brain. And we have ended it in a completely different place, contemplating the idea that we are a cyborg species, a symbiosis of flesh and flame that thinks with fire and could be on the verge of a new food revolution to define its future. We have gone from a simple campfire to questioning the very nature of our humanity. What idea from this entire journey has impacted you the most? The chemistry of flavor, the paradox of our fragility, or the idea that we are fire cyborgs? I'd love to read your reflections in the comments. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this descent. If you like these deep dives that challenge what we think we know, subscribe, because we have many more worlds to explore together.